Olivia's perfectly orchestrated business acquisition shattered when 6'6" of weathered Cowboy blocked the only doorway offering escape from the violent storm. "My ranch needs a woman's touch," he declared without introduction, his penetrating gaze igniting something primal in her that no corner office in Chicago had ever awakened. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The storm came without warning, a violent tantrum of nature that turned the sky an ominous shade of charcoal. Olivia Reeves cursed under her breath as her rental car's GPS lost signal, the blue dot that represented her location vanishing from the screen. Perfect, just perfect. The narrow country road stretched before her, bordered by fields that disappeared into a gray wall of rain and wind. She was officially lost in the middle of nowhere, Texas. "This is what I get for taking the scenic route," she muttered, squinting through the windshield as her wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour. The marketing executive from Chicago had flown into Dallas for what should have been a simple weekend trip to evaluate a potential acquisition, a small but successful artisanal food company. The owner had insisted on meeting at their production facility in a remote town rather than their Dallas office. "You need to see where the magic happens," he'd said cheerfully over the phone. Now, with night falling and the storm intensifying, the magic was nowhere to be found. A flash of lightning illuminated the landscape, followed by a deafening crack of thunder that made Olivia flinch. In that brief electric moment, she spotted a weathered wooden sign half hidden by overgrown brush. Slowing the car, she pulled alongside it, straining to read the faded letters. Blackwater Ranch, 2 miles ahead. A ranch meant people, shelter. Maybe someone who could point her in the right direction. The decision made itself as the rain pounded harder and visibility dropped to mere feet. Olivia continued forward, knuckles wide on the steering wheel, silently praying that this Blackwater Ranch would materialize before her rental car floated away. The narrow dirt road leading to the ranch had turned into a muddy river. Twice Olivia felt the car hydroplane, and each time her heart leapt into her throat. City driving had not prepared her for this. Her designer boots and tailored pants already seemed laughably out of place, relics from another world where weather forecasts were checked and business meetings happened in sleek office buildings. Just as she was contemplating the humiliation of calling emergency services, the headlights caught something solid through the rain, a large wooden archway spanning the road with the words "Blackwater Ranch" carved into the crossbeam. "Thank God," Olivia breathed, easing the car forward. The property beyond the gate was massive, though the details were obscured by sheets of rain. A long driveway curved toward what appeared to be a substantial ranch house, warm light glowing from several windows. As she approached, the car lurched suddenly, the front wheels sinking into what must have been a washed-out section of the drive. The engine whined in protest as Olivia tried to reverse, but the tires only spun uselessly, digging deeper into the mud. "No, no, no!" She slammed her palm against the steering wheel, fatigue and frustration finally boiling over. After 3 more failed attempts to extract the vehicle, Olivia faced the inevitable. She would have to make a run for the house and ask for help. Grabbing her purse and phone, she took a deep breath and flung open the car door. The wind nearly tore it from her grasp as she stepped out into ankle-deep mud. The rain was a physical force, drenching her instantly. Her silk blouse clung to her skin, and her carefully straightened hair plastered against her face as she trudged toward the house, each step a battle against the mud trying to claim her boots. By the time Olivia reached the covered porch, she resembled a drowned rat more than the polished executive who had boarded a plane that morning. Water streamed from her clothes, forming puddles at her feet as she raised a hand to knock on the solid wooden door. Before her knuckles could make contact, the door swung open, revealing a man who made Olivia momentarily forget the storm, her ruined clothes, and the car stuck in the mud. He filled the doorway completely, standing well over 6 feet tall with shoulders broad enough to require a custom-tailored shirt, though the one he wore now hung open, revealing a chest and abdomen that belonged on the cover of a fitness magazine. His face was partially shadowed by a black cowboy hat, but she could make out a strong jaw darkened with stubble and eyes that assessed her with immediate intensity. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, the contrast between them almost comical. She, bedraggled and dripping, he, a monument to rugged masculinity, backlit by the warm glow of the house behind him. "Your car stuck in the mud?" His voice was deep, with a Texas drawl that somehow managed to be both unhurried and commanding. Olivia nodded, suddenly aware of how she must look. "I'm so sorry to bother you. The storm, I got lost, and then I saw your sign." She gestured vaguely behind her, where her rental car sat pathetically mired in the ranch's driveway. The man stepped aside, opening the door wider. "Better come in before you catch pneumonia." Olivia hesitated. Every cautionary tale about strangers in remote locations flashed through her mind. As if reading her thoughts, the man's expression softened slightly. "I don't bite, ma'am. Not unless asked real nice." A hint of amusement touched his eyes. "Name's Jackson Blackwater. This is my ranch you're standing on." "Olivia Reeves," she replied, stepping cautiously into the warmth of the house. "I'm trying to get to Millfield. I have a meeting in the morning with—" "Millfield's nearly 50 miles west," Jackson interrupted, "and with this storm you won't be getting there tonight. Roads flood something terrible around here." The reality of her situation sank in as water continued to drip from her clothes onto the polished wooden floor. She was stranded at a stranger's ranch with no way to reach her destination until the storm passed. Jackson disappeared briefly into another room, returning with a large towel which he handed to her. As she accepted it, their fingers brushed, and Olivia felt an unexpected jolt that had nothing to do with the lightning outside. "Thank you," she murmured, wrapping the towel around her shoulders. He studied her for a moment longer, taking in her city clothes and the designer purse she clutched like a shield. "You're a long way from home, Miss Reeves." "It's Ms." she corrected automatically, then immediately felt foolish. Her professional title hardly seemed relevant while she stood dripping on this man's floor. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Ms. Reeves, then, what brings a city girl like you out to this part of Texas?" Before she could answer, a massive clap of thunder shook the house and the lights flickered ominously before steadying again. "Generators should kick in if the power goes," Jackson said, seeming completely unfazed by the storm's violence. "Happens all the time out here." "All the time?" Olivia couldn't keep the dismay from her voice. In Chicago, power outages were rare and quickly addressed. The idea of being regularly cut off from the world by weather was foreign to her. Jackson chuckled, a deep rumble that seemed to resonate in the space between them. "This isn't the city, Ms. Reeves. Out here, we're at nature's mercy." He gestured toward a hallway. "Let me find you some dry clothes. Can't have you catching cold on my watch." As he turned, Olivia caught a better glimpse of his profile. Strong, classically handsome, with a quiet confidence that came from a life of physical work and self-reliance. He moved with surprising grace for such a large man, like a predator perfectly comfortable in his territory. "My ranch hand is in town picking up supplies," Jackson called over his shoulder, "but I can get your car out once the rain lets up. Till then, you're welcome to wait it out here." Olivia followed him down the hallway, leaving wet footprints on the hardwood. "I appreciate that. I don't want to impose, but—" He stopped so suddenly that she nearly collided with his broad back. Turning to face her, his expression was unreadable in the shadowed hallway. "Truth is, Ms. Reeves," he said quietly, This old place could use a woman's touch, even if just for a night. Olivia's cheeks warmed at Jackson's words, though she tried to dismiss the reaction as a result of finally being in a heated room. A woman's touch, she repeated, arching an eyebrow. I doubt your ranch is looking for decorating tips from a stranded traveler. Jackson's mouth quirked up at one corner. Wasn't talking about decorating. He gestured toward a closed door. Bathroom's there. I'll leave some clothes outside the door. Take a hot shower before you catch your death. Before she could respond, he was already striding away, his movements powerful and sure. Olivia stood dripping in the hallway, caught between gratitude for his hospitality and wariness of the strange electricity she felt in his presence. The bathroom was surprisingly modern compared to the rustic exterior of the ranch house. A large walk-in shower with stone tiles, a clawfoot tub, and fixtures that looked recently updated. Olivia peeled off her sodden clothes, hanging them carefully over the shower door in a futile attempt to salvage her expensive blouse and tailored pants. Under the hot spray of water, she finally allowed herself to process the bizarre turn her business trip had taken. She'd gone from conference rooms and spreadsheets to being stranded at the home of a cowboy who looked like he'd walked straight off a romance novel cover. Her colleagues in Chicago would never believe it. After 15 minutes of letting the hot water soothe her tense muscles, Olivia reluctantly turned off the shower. She wrapped herself in a plush towel and cracked the bathroom door open to find a neatly folded stack of clothes on the floor. Bringing them inside, she assessed what Jackson had provided: a soft flannel shirt that would hang like a dress on her frame, a pair of drawstring sweatpants that would undoubtedly be too long, and thick wool socks. Olivia dressed quickly, rolling up the sleeves and pant legs to make the borrowed clothes somewhat manageable. She caught her reflection in the mirror and almost laughed at the transformation. With her wet hair hanging in waves around her shoulders and her face scrubbed clean of makeup, she looked nothing like the polished executive who commanded boardrooms. When she emerged from the bathroom, the smell of cooking guided her toward the kitchen. She found Jackson at the stove, his back to her as he tended to something that smelled mouth-wateringly good. He'd put on a shirt, though it remained unbuttoned, revealing glimpses of his muscled torso as he moved. "Feel better?" he asked without turning around, somehow sensing her presence. "Much, thank you," Olivia replied, suddenly self-conscious in the borrowed clothes. "I hope you don't mind, but I hung my things to dry." Jackson turned then, his eyes taking in her appearance with an appreciation that made her pulse quicken. "Flannel suits you," he said simply. "I'm sure I look ridiculous." She gestured down at the rolled cuffs and the way the shirt hung to mid-thigh. "That's not the word I'd use." His gaze lingered a moment longer before he turned back to the stove. "Hope you like chili. It's what I had going when the storm hit." "Smells amazing." Olivia moved closer, curious about the kitchen and the man occupying it. The space was unexpectedly well appointed, with granite countertops, professional-grade appliances, and copper pots hanging from a rack above a large island. "This is quite a kitchen for a bachelor rancher." Jackson stirred the pot of chili, adding a dash of something from a small bowl beside him. "My mother's influence. She believed every home needed a proper kitchen, no matter who was doing the cooking." He glanced over his shoulder. "And who says I'm a bachelor?" Olivia faltered, embarrassment washing over her. "I just assumed, you didn't mention—" His low chuckle cut through her stammering. "Relax, Ms. Reeves, you assumed right. Been on my own going on 8 years now." "Please call me Olivia," she said, relieved. "Ms. Reeves makes me feel like I'm conducting a performance review." "Do a lot of those in your line of work?" He pulled 2 bowls from a cabinet. Olivia leaned against the counter, watching him move efficiently around the kitchen. "More than I'd like. I'm in corporate acquisitions. My company identifies promising smaller businesses, evaluates them, and decides whether to buy them out. Sounds predatory, Jackson remarked, ladling chili into the bowls. It's business, she countered, though without her usual conviction. Something about the way he said it made her defensive. The companies we acquire benefit from our resources and distribution networks. Jackson set the bowls on the rustic wooden table in the adjoining dining area. And how many of those companies keep their identity after you're done with them? Olivia took a seat across from him, surprised by his insight. That's a fair question. Not many, I suppose. Outside, the storm continued its assault, rain lashing against the windows while thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, the kitchen was a warm haven, fragrant with spices and illuminated by soft lighting that cast a golden glow over everything. "So what brings you to this part of Texas?" Jackson asked as they began to eat. "Not exactly a hot spot for corporate raiders." "I was supposed to meet with the owner of Hill Country Provisions tomorrow," Olivia explained. "It's a small gourmet food company that's been gaining national attention. My firm is interested in acquiring it." Jackson's spoon paused halfway to his mouth. "Ethan Michael's company. You know him." "This is ranch country, Olivia. We all know each other." His expression had cooled slightly. "Ethan's built something special with that business. Uses ingredients from local farms, employs people who need second chances." The implication was clear, and Olivia felt herself bristling. "We're not looking to dismantle it. We recognize the value in what they've created. And you'll preserve that value right up until it's more profitable not to," Jackson said, though his tone remained conversational rather than confrontational. Olivia opened her mouth to deliver her standard corporate defense, then closed it again. There was something about sitting in this man's kitchen, wearing his clothes, eating food he had prepared, that made her usual arguments seem hollow. "The chili is delicious," she said instead, changing the subject. Jackson accepted the diversion with a slight nod. "Family recipe. Secret ingredient is a bit of dark chocolate." "Really?" Olivia took another spoonful, savoring the complex flavors. "I wouldn't have guessed that." "Most people don't," he agreed. "Sometimes the most unexpected combinations work the best." His eyes met hers as he said it, and Olivia felt that strange electricity again, a current running between them that had nothing to do with the lightning outside. The lights chose that moment to flicker violently before plunging the house into darkness. Olivia gasped, startled by the sudden blackout. "Stay put," Jackson's calm voice came from across the table. "Generator should kick in any second." True to his word, a low hum sounded from somewhere outside, and moments later, subdued emergency lights came on, casting the kitchen in a softer, more intimate glow. "Happens all the time?" Olivia asked, remembering his earlier comment. "Often enough." He rose from his chair, moving to a cabinet where he retrieved several candles and a box of matches. "Generator only powers the essentials: some lights, the refrigerator, water heater." As he placed candles around the kitchen and dining area, lighting each one, the space transformed. Shadows danced on the walls, and the rain-lashed windows reflected the warm, flickering light. "It's beautiful," Olivia admitted, surprised by how quickly the power outage had turned from alarming to almost magical. Jackson returned to his seat, his features softened by candlelight. "Different from Chicago, I imagine." "Very. When our power goes out, it's all emergency lights and backup systems. Nothing this," she searched for the right word, "intimate." The word hung between them, charged with possibility. Jackson's eyes held hers across the table, and for a moment, Olivia forgot about her stranded car, her business meeting, and all the responsibilities waiting for her. In that candlelit kitchen, with rain drumming against the roof and thunder rolling in the distance, there was only this moment, this man, and the strange feeling that she had somehow stepped into another world entirely. "More chili?" Jackson finally asked, breaking the spell. "Yes," Olivia said, though she wasn't entirely sure it was chili she was hungry for anymore. After dinner, Jackson suggested they move to the living room, where a large stone fireplace dominated one wall. He quickly built a fire, his hands moving with practiced efficiency as he arranged logs and kindling. Olivia watched from the doorway, admiring the fluid strength in his movements and the easy competence he displayed at tasks she'd never had to perform. "Do you always take care of strangers who show up on your doorstep?" she asked as flames began to lick at the dry wood, sending shadows dancing across the room. Jackson straightened up, brushing his hands on his jeans. "Don't get many strangers out here, especially not ones that look like you." "Soaking wet and wearing borrowed clothes." Olivia attempted to deflect the compliment with humor. His eyes met hers, steady and direct. Beautiful, determined, completely out of place. The candid assessment left her momentarily speechless. In Chicago, men in her professional circle were rarely so straightforward, their interest couched in careful innuendo and strategic maneuvering. Jackson's bluntness was as refreshing as it was unsettling. "I'm not usually this out of place," she finally said, moving closer to the warmth of the fire. "I'm actually very good at what I do." "I don't doubt that for a second." Jackson settled into a leather armchair, gesturing for her to take the sofa. "What I'm curious about is whether you enjoy what you do." Olivia sank onto the comfortable couch, tucking her legs beneath her. "That's a strange question." "Is it?" He reached for a bottle of bourbon on a side table, holding it up in silent offering. She nodded, and he poured 2 fingers into each of 2 glasses, handing one to her. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Olivia felt that now familiar jolt of awareness. "Most people spend their lives doing things they've convinced themselves are necessary, without ever asking if they're worthwhile," Jackson continued, settling back into his chair. Olivia sipped the bourbon, appreciating the smooth burn as it traveled down her throat. "And you think my job isn't worthwhile?" "I think buying out small businesses that people have poured their hearts into is complicated." His tone wasn't judgmental, merely contemplative. "Especially businesses like Ethan's that mean something to the community here." "You make it sound like I'm some kind of corporate villain," Olivia said, surprised by how much his opinion bothered her. "The acquisition I'm working on would give Hill Country Provisions access to national distribution. Their products would reach millions instead of thousands." "At what cost, though?" Jackson swirled the bourbon in his glass. "Ethan's company employs local people, uses local ingredients. Does your proposal account for maintaining those relationships?" The question hit uncomfortably close to home. The truth was, her team had already identified several efficiency opportunities that would involve consolidating suppliers and possibly relocating production to a larger facility in Dallas. "It's not that simple," she said defensively. "Nothing worthwhile ever is." Jackson's gaze moved to the fire. "This ranch has been in my family for 5 generations. My great-great-grandfather built this house with timber he cut himself. Every decision I make isn't just about profit. It's about legacy, community, the people who depend on this land for their livelihood." Olivia studied him in the firelight, seeing beyond the imposing physical presence to something deeper, a man rooted in values she recognized but had somehow drifted away from in her pursuit of corporate success. "That's admirable," she said quietly. "But not everyone has the luxury of prioritizing legacy over survival." "Is that what you're doing? Surviving?" There was no judgment in his question, only genuine curiosity. Olivia looked down at her glass, considering her answer. "I'm succeeding. By every metric that's supposed to matter, Salary, position, professional reputation. I'm at the top of my game. But, who said there's a but? Jackson's smile was knowing. There's always a but when someone defines success by other people's metrics. The observation was too insightful, cutting too close to thoughts she rarely allowed herself to examine. Olivia stood abruptly, moving to the large windows where rain still streamed down the glass like tears. "You don't know me," she said, her back to him. "One conversation over chili doesn't make you an expert on my life choices." She heard him rise, felt his presence behind her before he spoke. "You're right, I don't know you. But I recognize someone running when I see it." "I'm not running," she protested, turning to face him. "I'm building something." Jackson stood close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. In the dim light, his face was a study in contrasts. Strong jawline softened by the gentle concern in his expression. "Are you sure it's something you want?" he asked. The question hung between them, layered with meaning that extended beyond her career. Olivia was suddenly, acutely aware of their proximity, of the heat radiating from his body, of how easy it would be to close the small distance between them. A tremendous crack of thunder broke the moment, making Olivia jump. Jackson's hand came to rest on her arm, steadying her, a reflexive gesture of protection that sent warmth spiraling through her. "Storm's getting worse," he observed, his voice lower, rougher. "Will my car be okay?" she asked, grasping for the practical to ground herself against the pull she felt toward him. "It'll be fine. Might need a good wash after, but the mud won't hurt it." His hand remained on her arm, thumb tracing a small, perhaps unconscious circle against her skin through the flannel sleeve. Olivia knew she should step away, re-establish a professional distance, but she couldn't bring herself to move. And the roads? How long before they're passable? Depends on how much rain we get. Could be clear by morning, could be a day or two. A day or two. Alarm cut through the haze of attraction. "I can't miss this meeting. My entire trip is built around it." Jackson's hand fell away as he registered her distress. "We'll check conditions in the morning. If it's safe to drive, I'll help you get to Millfield." Olivia nodded, trying to refocus on her priorities. She was here for work, not to be seduced by a cowboy with unexpectedly profound insights and hands that made her skin tingle. "I should probably get some sleep," she said, stepping away from the window in the magnetic pull of his presence. "It's been a long day." "Of course." Jackson moved toward the hallway. "Guest room's this way. Should have everything you need, but let me know if you're missing anything." He led her to a comfortable bedroom, with a queen-sized bed covered in a handmade quilt. Like the rest of the house, it was a blend of rustic charm and surprising luxury, antique furniture alongside high-quality modern bedding. "Bathrooms through there," he indicated a door on the far wall. "Should be a new toothbrush in the drawer if you need one." "Thank you," Olivia said, standing awkwardly in the center of the room. "For everything. Not everyone would be so kind to a stranger." Jackson leaned against the door frame, regarding her with that same direct gaze that made her feel simultaneously exposed and embraced. "Like I said, we don't get many strangers out here, especially not ones that make a man rethink things he thought he had figured out." Before she could process what he meant, he straightened and stepped back into the hallway. "Sleep well, Olivia. Morning comes early on a ranch." The door closed softly behind him, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the persistent sound of rain against the windows. Olivia sank onto the edge of the bed, her mind whirling with confusion and an unexpected yearning for something she couldn't quite name. She'd come to Texas to facilitate a business acquisition, straightforward, professional, the kind of transaction she'd handled dozens of times before. Nothing in her carefully planned itinerary had accounted for getting stranded at a ranch owned by a man who challenged her perceptions and awakened feelings she'd long since buried beneath ambition and practicality. As Olivia slipped between the cool sheets, she told herself that morning would bring clarity. The storm would pass, the roads would clear, and she would return to the orderly world she understood. Yet as sleep claimed her, it was Jackson's eyes she saw, steady, knowing, seeing through the carefully constructed facade to the woman underneath who wondered if she'd been running in the wrong direction all along. Olivia woke to unfamiliar sounds, the distant lowing of cattle, the rustle of wind through trees, and a complete absence of the urban soundtrack that typically began her days. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't place herself. Then memories of the storm and her unexpected host came flooding back. Sunlight streamed through curtains she hadn't bothered to close the night before, painting warm stripes across the handmade quilt. The storm had passed, leaving behind a pristine blue sky visible through the window. She stretched, surprised by how well she'd slept in this strange bed, in this strange house, with that not-so-strange attraction to its owner lingering in her mind. Her phone showed no service, not surprising given their remote location. She'd need to find a way to contact Ethan Michaels and reschedule their meeting. Surely he'd understand, given the weather conditions. The smell of coffee and something baking lured her from the comfort of the bed. She found her own clothes dry but hopelessly wrinkled, so she remained in Jackson's borrowed flannel and sweatpants, rolling the sleeves and pant legs up once more before padding barefoot toward the kitchen. She expected to find Jackson there, but the kitchen was empty save for a pot of coffee on the warmer and a note propped against a plate of homemade biscuits. "Help yourself to breakfast. On the porch when you're ready." Olivia poured herself coffee, added a splash of cream from a small pitcher in the refrigerator, and took a still-warm biscuit from the plate. The first bite revealed a perfectly flaky texture with a buttery, savory flavor that put her usual grab-and-go breakfast to shame. Cup in hand, she made her way to the front porch, where she found Jackson leaning against the railing, his gaze fixed on the sprawling landscape before him. The morning sun highlighted the strong lines of his profile and glinted off the silver in his dark hair. He'd dressed for work in worn jeans, boots, and a blue denim shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to reveal muscled forearms dusted with dark hair. "Morning," she said, suddenly self-conscious of her borrowed clothes and bed-tousled hair. He turned, and the appreciation in his eyes as they traveled over her dispelled any insecurity. "Sleep well." "Better than I expected." She joined him at the railing, looking out over the ranch. "Your land is beautiful." And it was. The morning light revealed what the storm had hidden: rolling hills dotted with oak trees, verdant pastures where cattle grazed, and in the distance a line of mountains hazed blue against the horizon. The landscape had a wild, untamed quality that made her concrete and glass world seem artificial by comparison. "Been in my family for nearly 150 years, Jackson said, pride evident in his voice. "Started with 80 acres and a dream. Now it's over 6,000 acres of the best grazing land in the county." "You run it alone?" Olivia asked, sipping her coffee. "Got a handful of good men who help. Miguel's been with us since my father's time. He's more family than employee. Couple of younger guys learning the ropes. But the decisions, the responsibility, that's all mine." He turned to face her fully. "Checked the roads this morning. Creek's overflowed its banks about 2 miles down, washed out part of the county road. Won't be passable until tomorrow at the earliest." Disappointment and relief warred within Olivia. Disappointment at the professional delay, relief at the excuse to remain in Jackson's company. "I need to call Ethan Michaels, reschedule our meeting." "Landline in my office," Jackson offered. "Cell service is spotty out here even in good weather." "Thank you." She hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry for imposing on your hospitality another day." not an imposition. His voice dropped lower, a rougher edge to the drawl that sent a shiver through her despite the morning warmth. Told you last night, this place could use a woman's touch. There it was again. That phrase that hovered between innocent observation and something far more provocative. About that, Olivia said, finding her business negotiator's voice. What exactly did you mean? Jackson straightened from the railing, closing some of the distance between them. Up close, the height difference between them was more pronounced. She had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, a rare experience for a woman who typically wore heels that put her at eye level with most men. A ranch this size used to have a whole family running it, he said. Men working the land, women managing the household, children learning both. Now it's just me rattling around in a house built for generations. His honesty disarmed her. There was no pretense in his assessment, no carefully constructed image to project. Just a man acknowledging a simple truth about his life. Don't you get lonely? The question slipped out before she could censor it. Sometimes. His eyes held hers. But I've learned there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. What about you, Olivia? All those people in that big city of yours. Do they keep loneliness at bay? The question hit a nerve she hadn't realized was exposed. In Chicago, she was surrounded by colleagues, acquaintances, occasional dates, but how many people really knew her? How many would notice if the real Olivia vanished behind the polished executive facade she'd perfected? Before she could formulate an answer, the sound of hooves drew Jackson's attention. A man on horseback approached the house, riding with the easy confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime in the saddle. That's Miguel, Jackson said. Problem with one of the heifers about to calve. Need to check on her. He studied Olivia for a moment. Want to come along? See what ranch life is really about? The invitation surprised her. I'd just be in the way. Not if you stay where I tell you. There was that hint of command in his voice again, not domineering, but the natural authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed in matters where lives might depend on it. Curiosity won out over caution. Let me change first. Jackson's eyes traveled over her once more, lingering on the places where his shirt draped her curves. Might want to keep the borrowed clothes. What you were wearing yesterday isn't suited for ranch work. 20 minutes later, Olivia found herself in a battered pickup truck, bouncing along a dirt track that cut through the heart of Blackwater Ranch. She'd managed to salvage her own undergarments, but had taken Jackson's advice about the rest, remaining in his flannel shirt and sweatpants, though she'd tied the shirt at her waist to give it some shape. Her city boots had been replaced by a pair of rubber boots Jackson had found in a mudroom, slightly too large but serviceable. You're meeting with Ethan, Jackson said as they drove. What exactly does your company want with Hill Country Provisions? Olivia considered deflecting with corporate speak but opted for honesty. Their artisanal food products have a devoted regional following and excellent growth potential. My firm believes we could scale their operation nationally, maybe internationally. And what happens to Ethan in this scenario? To his employees? If all goes according to plan, he'd receive a substantial buyout. As for the employees, she hesitated. There would likely be some restructuring. Jackson's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Restructuring, corporate code for layoffs and relocations. It's more complicated than that, Olivia insisted, though the defense felt increasingly hollow. Always is. Jackson slowed the truck as they approached a collection of outbuildings. But sometimes the simplest solution is to leave something good exactly as it is. Before she could respond, they pulled up beside a large barn where Miguel waited, his weathered face creased with concern. Jackson switched effortlessly to Spanish. conversing with the older man in rapid, fluent sentences that left Olivia both impressed and further intrigued by the layers of this man she was still discovering. The situation, as Jackson explained after their conversation, involved a first-time heifer having difficulty with her labor. "Might need to assist with the birth," he said, his tone matter-of-fact, "and could get messy. You sure you want to see this?" Olivia squared her shoulders. "I'm not squeamish." A smile flickered across his face. "We'll see." Inside the barn, Olivia was hit by unfamiliar smells. Hay, animal, earth, and something more primal that she couldn't immediately identify. The space was surprisingly clean and organized, with stalls lining both sides and equipment hanging in neat rows along the walls. In a large pen near the back, a young cow lay on her side, sides heaving with effort, while Miguel prepared various supplies nearby. "First-time mother," Jackson explained, washing his hands at a utility sink. "Calf's positioned wrong. If we don't help, we could lose both of them." Olivia watched as he removed his shirt, hanging it on a nearby hook. The sight of his bare torso, all rippling muscle and tanned skin, momentarily distracted her from the situation at hand. He caught her staring, and a small, knowing smile touched his lips before he turned to pull on a long plastic sleeve that covered his arm to the shoulder. "You can wait outside if you want," he offered. Something in his tone suggested he expected her to take the out, to retreat to the safety of the truck, rather than witness the messy reality of birth and possibly death. Perhaps it was that subtle challenge, or maybe her own stubbornness, but Olivia shook her head. "I'll stay. Might as well see what ranch life is really about, right?" Jackson nodded, respect flickering in his eyes. "Stand where Miguel shows you. Do exactly what he says if he asks for help." For the next 30 minutes, Olivia witnessed something she'd never imagined being part of: the struggle to bring new life into the world. Jackson worked with focused intensity, his powerful arms gentle as he reached inside the heifer to reposition the calf. He spoke continuously in low, soothing tones to the distressed animal, his voice a calming presence amid her pained lowing. Miguel directed Olivia to hold containers, fetch clean towels, and eventually to help steady the heifer's head, murmuring instructions in a mix of English and Spanish. To her surprise, Olivia found herself fully engaged, the corporate executive replaced by someone more fundamental, a human being participating in one of life's most basic miracles. "There," Jackson grunted, his arm deep inside the cow. "Got him turned. Miguel, ready with the chains." What followed was a blur of coordinated effort. Jackson and Miguel working in perfect tandem, communicating with minimal words, their movements precise despite the chaos of the situation. Olivia found herself holding her breath as the calf finally began to emerge. First tiny hooves, then a nose, and finally, with one last massive effort from the mother and careful guidance from Jackson, the entire slick body slid into the world. "Towels," Jackson called, and Olivia rushed forward with the clean towels she'd been clutching. Their hands brushed as he took them, both slick with fluid and birth matter, but she barely registered the mess. Her attention was fixed on the seemingly lifeless calf now lying on the straw. Jackson quickly cleared the calf's nostrils and mouth, then began vigorously rubbing its body with the towels. "Come on, little one," he murmured. "Your mama went through too much for you to give up now." As if hearing him, the calf suddenly jerked, then coughed, expelling fluid from its lungs. A moment later, it lifted its head, blinking huge brown eyes at the strange world it had entered. A spontaneous laugh of delight escaped Olivia, the sound so unguarded and genuine that both men looked at her in surprise. She felt a blush rise to her cheeks but couldn't suppress her smile as the calf struggled to coordinate its gangly legs. "It's a bull calf," Jackson told her, his own face transformed by a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Strong one too, from the looks of him." For the next half hour, they monitored mother and baby, ensuring the calf found its way to nurse and that the heifer was recovering well from her ordeal. Olivia watched in fascination as the wobbly newborn gained confidence with each passing minute, its instincts guiding it to the source of nourishment with increasing determination. "Life finds a way," Jackson said softly, coming to stand beside her at the pen's edge. His body was streaked with sweat and birth fluids, his hair damp with exertion, yet Olivia had never seen a man look more powerfully alive, more connected to the essential rhythms of existence. That was... She searched for adequate words. Incredible. I've never seen anything like it. "Most people haven't anymore," he replied. "We've sanitized life, separated ourselves from these basic truths." His eyes, when they met hers, held a question. "Did it scare you?" "No," she answered honestly. "It was messy and intense, but also beautiful." She glanced down at her own soiled clothes and hands with a rueful smile. "Though I'm definitely not dressed for corporate headquarters anymore." Jackson laughed, the sound rich and warm in the barn's confines. "Somehow I think you wear birth fluids better than designer suits." The compliment, strange as it was, warmed her. In this moment, covered in muck from helping deliver a calf, she felt more genuinely herself than she had in years of polish and professionalism. Miguel approached, speaking to Jackson in Spanish while glancing occasionally at Olivia. When he finished, Jackson translated. "He says you did well. Kept your head, followed instructions, didn't faint at the smell." A hint of teasing entered his voice. "High praise from Miguel. He's seen ranch hands twice your size pass out cold their first time assisting a birth." Pride swelled in Olivia's chest. Not the familiar satisfaction of closing a deal or securing a promotion, but something more elemental. She had participated in creating life rather than restructuring companies. The feeling was addictive. After cleaning up as best they could at the barn's utility sink, they headed back to the house. In the truck, Jackson glanced over at her, amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing. Just thinking you might be the first person to ever help deliver a calf while wearing Louboutin boots." Olivia looked down at her feet, where her expensive city boots sat mud-caked on the floorboard, having been replaced by the rubber boots for the barn work. She laughed, the sound light and unfamiliar to her own ears. "If my colleagues could see me now," she mused. "I've spent years building a reputation as someone who never loses control, never gets messy." "And how does it feel? Getting messy?" The question held layers of meaning that made her pulse quicken. "Surprisingly good," she admitted. Back at the house, Jackson directed her to the guest bathroom while he took the master. "Take your time," he said. "Got plenty of hot water. Leave those clothes outside the door. They'll need a serious washing." Under the hot spray of the shower, Olivia replayed the morning's events. The corporate world she inhabited seemed increasingly distant and artificial compared to the raw authenticity of what she'd just experienced. In her professional life, delivery meant presentations and reports, not helping bring actual new life into the world. She thought about Jackson, his capable hands, his gentle strength, the easy authority with which he handled a crisis. So different from the men she dated in Chicago, with their calculated ambition and polished personas that matched her own. After her shower, wrapped in a plush towel, she peeked into the hallway and found clean clothes outside her door, another flannel shirt, smaller this time, and a pair of jeans with a belt to cinch the too large waist. She dressed quickly, rolling the jeans at the ankles, and made her way to the kitchen where she found Jackson preparing lunch, his hair still damp from his shower. "Hope those fit better," he said, nodding at the clothes. "Found some things my sister left last time she visited." "Much better, thank you." Olivia leaned against the counter, watching him assemble sandwiches with the same confident efficiency he brought to everything. "Can I help?" "You can tell me more about this meeting with Ethan," he replied, sliding a cutting board in her direction along with a knife and tomato. Why his company specifically? As Olivia sliced the tomato, she found herself explaining the details of the potential acquisition with more candor than she'd initially intended. Something about this man made her want to be honest, even when the truth didn't paint her or her company in the most flattering light. So, basically, Jackson summarized as they sat down to eat, your firm wants to take Ethan's locally sourced, community-supporting business model and transform it into something that maximizes shareholder value instead. Put that way, it sounded so clinical, so at odds with the life-affirming morning she'd just experienced. It's not quite that simple, she said, but her protest lacked conviction. Isn't it? Jackson's gaze was steady, not judgmental but unwilling to accept corporate doublespeak. What happens to the local farmers who supply his ingredients when your efficiency experts decide it's cheaper to source from major distributors? Olivia had no answer that didn't confirm his assessment. The silence between them grew, filled with unspoken challenge. I should make that call to Ethan, she finally said, setting down her half-eaten sandwich. Reschedule for tomorrow, assuming the road's clear. Jackson nodded, rising to lead her to his office. As she followed him down the hallway, Olivia realized that somewhere between last night's storm and this morning's birth, something fundamental had shifted inside her. The certainty she'd carried about her professional path had developed hairline fractures, and through those cracks, new possibilities were beginning to emerge. Jackson's office reflected the man himself, practical, unpretentious, yet revealing unexpected depths. Handcrafted bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes on ranch management alongside classics of literature and history. A large desk of weathered oak dominated the space, its surface organized with meticulous care. Through the window, the vast expanse of Blackwater Ranch spread to the horizon, a constant reminder of his responsibilities and heritage. Phone's there, Jackson said, gesturing to an old-fashioned landline. I'll give you privacy. Actually, Olivia found herself saying, would you mind staying? You know Ethan better than I do. Maybe you can help me explain the situation. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, at her willingness to include him in this professional exchange. He nodded, settling into a leather chair in the corner. Olivia dialed the number she'd memorized for her meeting preparations. After 2 rings, a friendly male voice answered. Hill Country Provisions, Ethan speaking. Mr. Michaels, this is Olivia Reeves from North Star Acquisitions. We were scheduled to meet today, but I'm afraid I've run into some trouble with the weather. Ms. Reeves, I was getting worried. Tried calling your cell but couldn't get through. I got caught in the storm last night, she explained. My car got stuck near Blackwater Ranch. The roads are still flooded. Blackwater. Ethan's voice shifted. You're with Jackson Blackwater. Olivia glanced at Jackson, who raised an eyebrow, clearly able to hear both sides of the conversation. Yes, Mr. Blackwater has been kind enough to offer shelter until the road's clear. A chuckle came through the line. Well, you're in good hands then. Jackson's one of the best men I know, salt of the earth. He speaks highly of you as well, Olivia said, watching Jackson's expression remain neutral despite the praise. About our meeting. The roads should be clear by tomorrow afternoon, Ethan interrupted. Why don't you come by my place then? Say around 3? Less formal than the production facility. We can talk over coffee on the porch. The suggestion was unorthodox by corporate standards, but Olivia found herself agreeing readily. That sounds perfect. Thank you for understanding. Storms happen, Ethan said philosophically. Can't control nature, just gotta work with it. Put Jackson on for a minute, would you? Olivia handed the phone to Jackson, who took it with a questioning look before greeting his friend. What followed was a conversation punctuated by deep chuckles and cryptic responses that revealed little to Olivia, beyond the obvious camaraderie between the two men. When Jackson finally hung up, there was an amused quirk to his mouth. "What did he say?" Olivia asked. "Just catching up." Jackson deflected, though something in his eyes suggested more had been discussed. "Ethan's a good man. Been fighting to keep his business local despite plenty of offers before yours." The implication was clear, and Olivia felt a renewed twinge of discomfort about her mission. He seems to have built something special. He has. Jackson studied her for a moment. "Question is, why are you so determined to change it?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. "I told you, it's about growth potential, market expansion. Corporate speak," he cut in gently. "I'm asking what you think, Olivia, not what your company trained you to say." She opened her mouth to deliver her well-rehearsed pitch, then closed it again. After witnessing the birth that morning, after seeing Jackson's connection to the land and its rhythms, the prepared arguments felt hollow. "I don't know anymore," she admitted quietly, surprising herself with the honesty. "When I took this assignment, it seemed straightforward. Now you've seen another way of being in the world," he finished for her. "A way that values creation over acquisition." Their eyes met across the desk, and Olivia felt that now familiar current between them strengthen. Jackson wasn't just challenging her professional perspective, he was seeing through to parts of herself she'd buried beneath years of corporate ambition. "I should finish those sandwiches," he said, breaking the moment but not the connection. "You must be starving after playing midwife this morning." The afternoon unfolded with unexpected ease, as Jackson showed Olivia more of the ranch, the horses in the stable, the workshop where he crafted furniture during winter months, the spring-fed creek that marked the property's eastern boundary. They rode in his truck and occasionally on foot, with Jackson pointing out features of the land with obvious pride and deep knowledge. "My great-grandfather planted those oaks," he said, indicating a majestic line of trees that provided shade along a fence line. "Said a man should always plant trees he'll never sit under, as a gift to those who come after." "That's beautiful," Olivia said, touched by the generational thinking so different from quarterly profit reports and shareholder value. "It's how we've always approached this land, as caretakers, not owners, each generation making it better for the next." As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, they returned to the house. Jackson suggested dinner on the back porch to enjoy the sunset, and Olivia found herself eagerly accepting. They worked together in the kitchen, preparing a simple meal of grilled steaks, roasted vegetables, and freshly baked bread that Jackson pulled from the freezer and warmed in the oven. "My mother's recipe," he explained as Olivia bit into the crusty, flavorful bread. "She taught me to cook when I was young. Said no child of hers would grow up helpless in a kitchen." "She sounds remarkable," Olivia said, savoring both the food and the glimpse into his past. "She was." A shadow crossed his face. "Lost her and my father in a car accident 8 years ago, coming back from a rare vacation of all things." "I'm so sorry," Olivia said softly, instinctively reaching across the table to cover his hand with hers. He turned his palm up, capturing her fingers in a gentle grip. "Life's fragile. Makes you think about what really matters." The simple touch of their hands, the shared moment of vulnerability, created an intimacy that had been building since she'd arrived on his doorstep. As they sat together watching the Texas sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Olivia felt more connected to this man, and to herself, than she had to anyone in years. "Beautiful," she murmured as the colors deepened. "Yes," Jackson agreed, though when she turned, she found him looking not at the sunset, but at her. The air between them seemed to vibrate with possibility. Olivia knew they were approaching a threshold. One more step and something would change irrevocably. Professional boundaries would dissolve, replaced by something far more complicated and potentially painful, given their different worlds. "Jackson," she began, not entirely sure what she intended to say. "You don't belong in that corporate world," he said quietly, his eyes intent on hers. "I've watched you today, helping with the calf, walking this land. You come alive out here in a way I doubt you ever do in boardrooms." The observation struck too close to truth she'd been avoiding. "You don't know me well enough to say that." "Don't I?" His hand reached up, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The casual intimacy of the gesture sent warmth cascading through her. Sometimes an outsider sees things more clearly than we can ourselves. "And what do you see?" she whispered, barely trusting her voice. "A woman trapped in a life that's too small for her spirit." His fingers lingered at her jawline. A woman afraid to admit she might want something different. Olivia should have been offended by his presumption. Instead, she felt exposed, vulnerable, seen in ways both terrifying and exhilarating. "And what would you suggest instead?" she challenged, her voice stronger now. "That I give up my career, my life for—" "What exactly?" "For authenticity," he answered simply. "For connection to something real. I'm not saying it has to be this ranch, or," he hesitated, "me. Just something that feeds your soul instead of only your ambition." Before she could respond, the distant sound of an approaching vehicle caught their attention. Jackson rose, moving to the edge of the porch with a frown. "Expecting someone?" Olivia asked, half relieved and half disappointed by the interruption. "No," he replied, his posture shifting subtly to something more protective. "And this time of evening, unexpected visitors usually mean trouble." As headlights appeared at the end of the drive, cutting through the gathering dusk, Olivia felt the magical bubble of their shared day beginning to burst. Reality, it seemed, was about to intrude on the sanctuary they'd created together. The approaching vehicle turned out to be a sleek black SUV with tinted windows, the kind of corporate transport that looked utterly out of place on the rugged ranch road. As it pulled to a stop in front of the house, Olivia felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. She recognized that vehicle. It belonged to her firm's Texas division. The driver's door opened and a tall man in an immaculate suit stepped out, his polished loafers immediately gathering dust from the driveway. David Chen, her firm's regional director, surveyed the ranch house with poorly disguised disdain before his gaze landed on Olivia and Jackson on the porch. "Olivia," he called, his voice carrying a forced joviality that made her wince. "Thank goodness you're all right. We've been trying to reach you since yesterday." She descended the porch steps, acutely aware of Jackson following close behind her. "David, what are you doing here? When you missed check-in last night and this morning, we tracked your rental car's GPS." He glanced at Jackson, then back to Olivia, his eyes widening slightly at her borrowed clothes and casual appearance. "The Dallas office said there had been severe storms in the area. We were concerned." Translation: they were concerned about the deal, not her. Olivia knew how the firm operated. A missed meeting with a high-value acquisition target would set off alarms at headquarters. "I'm fine," she assured him. "My car got stuck in the mud during the storm. Mr. Blackwater was kind enough to offer shelter until the roads cleared." David extended his hand to Jackson, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "David Chen, North Star Acquisitions. Thank you for looking after our top negotiator." Jackson's handshake was firm but brief. Wasn't a hardship. An awkward silence descended, filled with unspoken assessments. David was clearly taking in the situation. Olivia in borrowed clothes, the intimate dinner setting on the porch, the undeniable tension between her and the imposing rancher. "Well," David finally said, "the roads are clear enough now. I can drive you to your meeting with Michaels. We've rescheduled for first thing tomorrow morning." "Actually," Olivia said, I already spoke with Ethan. We agreed on tomorrow afternoon. David's smile tightened. That won't work. The Chicago team wants an update by noon. We need to expedite this. The corporate urgency that had once seemed so reasonable now felt jarring and artificial. Olivia glanced back at Jackson, whose expression remained neutral, though his eyes reflected understanding of her predicament. I can't just show up at his door tonight, David. That's not how business is conducted out here. Out here? David repeated, arching an eyebrow. Olivia, may I speak with you privately for a moment? She nodded reluctantly, turning to Jackson. Would you excuse us? Take your time, he said, his voice revealing nothing of what he might be thinking. I'll check on that new calf. As Jackson strode toward the barn, his powerful figure silhouetted against the sunset, David steered Olivia toward the SUV. What's going on here? He asked as soon as they were out of earshot. You're dressed like I don't know what. You've rescheduled a priority meeting without authorization. And the way that cowboy was looking at you. His name is Jackson, Olivia interrupted, surprised by her own defensiveness. And nothing is going on. I got caught in a storm, my car got stuck, he helped me. End of story. David studied her face, his years of negotiation experience allowing him to read the truth she wasn't admitting. This is why we don't typically send women to these rural acquisitions, he muttered, too easily distracted by the local color. The casual sexism stung, but not as much as the implication that her feelings for Jackson were simply a distraction, something frivolous and unprofessional. That's completely out of line, she said, her voice hard. My gender has nothing to do with my ability to negotiate this deal. Then prove it, he challenged. Get in the car. We'll go to the hotel, prepare our strategy, and meet Michaels first thing tomorrow. The Chicago partners want this closed by the end of the week. The ultimatum hung in the air between them. In the distance, Olivia could see Jackson entering the barn, his movements confident and purposeful even from afar. She thought of the calf they'd delivered together, the sunset they'd shared, the conversations that had awakened something long dormant within her. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, she said firmly. That's when I'll see Ethan Michaels. David's expression hardened. Olivia, need I remind you that your promotion to partner is riding on this acquisition? The board specifically requested you for this because of your perfect closure record. The reminder of everything she'd worked for, the years of long hours, sacrificed relationships, and single-minded focus on climbing the corporate ladder, should have solidified her resolve. Instead, it felt like a weight pressing down on her chest, restricting her breath. I'm aware of what's at stake, she said. But I also know that rushing Michaels will backfire. He's not like our usual targets, David. He values relationships over rapid transactions. And you've become quite the expert on local customs in, 24 hours? David's tone dripped with sarcasm. What else has your cowboy taught you? The condescension ignited something fierce in Olivia. Enough to know that your approach won't work here. If you want this deal to succeed, you need to trust my judgment. They stared at each other, corporate warriors locked in a silent battle of wills. Finally, David sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Fine. Tomorrow afternoon. But I'm staying in the area, and I expect regular updates. He glanced toward the barn where Jackson had disappeared. And, Olivia, remember where your loyalties lie. That man may be charming, but he represents everything our client wants to change about businesses like Michaels. Local, limited, stuck in the past. His words hit with precision, targeting the very conflict that had been brewing inside her. Jackson did represent a different way of life, one rooted in land, legacy, and living in harmony with natural rhythms rather than quarterly targets. I'll see you tomorrow at Ethan's, she said, effectively dismissing him. David's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly before returning to his SUV. The hotel in Millfield has your reservation ready. I assume you want me to take you there now? The question forced a decision Olivia hadn't been prepared to make. Logic dictated she should go with David, return to the corporate world where she belonged, prepare properly for tomorrow's negotiation. But the thought of leaving the ranch, of ending this interlude with Jackson so abruptly, created an almost physical pain in her chest. I need to get my things, she said, buying time, and thank Mr. Blackwater properly for his hospitality. David checked his watch with obvious impatience. I'll wait. Inside the house, Olivia moved slowly through the guest room, gathering her few belongings. Her wrinkled business clothes seemed like artifacts from another life, one that had grown increasingly distant during her time at Blackwater Ranch. A soft knock at the door drew her attention. Jackson stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Your colleague seems eager to rescue you from the wilds, he said, a hint of something, hurt, disappointment, beneath the wry observation. David's always been intense about work, she replied, folding her blouse with unnecessary precision. He's worried about the deal. Jackson leaned against the doorframe, studying her. And you? What are you worried about? The question penetrated her professional armor, reaching the confused woman beneath. What was she worried about? Losing the promotion she'd worked years to achieve? Or losing something she'd only just found? A connection to a simpler, more authentic way of being in the world? I don't know, she admitted softly. Everything feels complicated suddenly. He stepped into the room then, closing the distance between them with 2 long strides. Standing before her, he seemed to fill the space with his presence, solid and real in a way that made her corporate concerns feel insubstantial. It doesn't have to be, he said, his voice low and intimate. Some choices are simpler than we make them out to be. Olivia looked up at him, her pulse quickening at his proximity. Which choice would that be? The one between what others expect of you and what your heart knows is right. The air between them seemed charged with possibilities, roads diverging, lives changing, futures rewriting themselves in real time. Olivia was acutely aware of everything about Jackson in that moment, the scent of his skin, a mixture of soap and something distinctly masculine, the steady rise and fall of his chest, the intensity in his eyes that made her feel simultaneously vulnerable and protected. David's waiting, she said, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. Is that your choice then? Jackson's voice remained gentle, without accusation. Outside, the SUV's engine idled, its artificial hum a stark contrast to the natural evening sounds of the ranch. The corporate world was literally waiting at the door, ready to reclaim her. I have responsibilities, she began, but Jackson shook his head. That's not what I asked, Olivia. I asked what you choose, not what you think you owe. The distinction struck her like a physical blow. How long had it been since she'd made a decision based purely on what she wanted, rather than what was expected of her? The realization that she couldn't readily recall such a moment was both shocking and sad. I can't just abandon my career on a whim, she said, though something inside her whispered that what she felt for this man and this place was far from a whim. Jackson took her hands in his, the touch sending warmth cascading through her. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking for tonight. Stay, see this through. Whatever's waiting out there. He nodded toward the window where David's SUV was visible. It can wait until morning. The request was simple, reasonable even, yet it represented a small rebellion against the corporate machinery that had dictated her life for so long. One night, one choice that was hers alone. What would we do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. A smile touched the corners of his mouth, warming his eyes. Finish our dinner, watch the stars come out. There's something to see out here without city lights. Talk or not talk. His thumbs traced small circles on her palms, sending shivers up her arms. Just be, without agendas or expectations. The offer was seductive in its simplicity, a pause button on the relentless forward momentum of her career-focused life. A chance to breathe, to feel, to simply exist in this strange, compelling connection they'd formed. "I'll need to tell David," she said, making her decision. Jackson nodded, releasing her hands. "I'll be on the porch." Outside, David was leaning against the SUV, scrolling through his phone with impatient jabs of his finger. He looked up as Olivia approached, his expression shifting from annoyance to professional neutrality. "Finally, I was about to send a search party." "I'm not coming with you, David." The words emerged with surprising ease. "I'll meet you at Ethan's tomorrow as planned." His facade of neutrality crumbled. "Are you serious? You're staying here? With him?" He gestured toward the house where Jackson had disappeared. "My car is still stuck in the mud," she said, though they both knew this was an excuse rather than a reason. "And I want to prepare for the meeting in my own way." David studied her face, reading the determination there. "This isn't like you, Olivia. You've never been one to mix business with whatever this is. Maybe it's time I reconsidered some things." She straightened her shoulders, reclaiming the confidence that had made her one of the firm's top negotiators. "I'll see you tomorrow at Ethan's, 3 o'clock. For a moment she thought he might argue further, but years of working together had taught him when she couldn't be moved. With a frustrated sigh, he opened the driver's door. "Don't throw away everything you've worked for," he said, his final warning before sliding into the vehicle. Olivia watched the SUV retreat down the driveway, its taillights growing smaller until they disappeared around a bend. The weight that lifted from her shoulders with its departure surprised her, as if she'd been carrying a burden so familiar she'd forgotten it was there. When she returned to the porch, Jackson was waiting as promised, 2 glasses of wine on the table beside their half-finished dinner. The sun had set completely now, leaving the vast Texas sky a deepening blue canvas where the first stars were beginning to appear. "He didn't seem happy," Jackson observed as she took her seat. "He isn't." Olivia reached for her wine, savoring the rich flavor as she gathered her thoughts. "David believes in the corporate path, absolutely. The idea that there might be other ways to measure success, it threatens his worldview. And yours?" The question hung between them, simple, yet profound. Olivia gazed out at the darkening land, considering. "I used to believe it too. That success meant a corner office, a 7-figure salary, respect in boardrooms." She turned to face him. "But something's changed since I've been here." "The ranch has that effect on people," Jackson said. "Strips away the artificial, leaves you facing what's real." "Is that what happened to you?" she asked, curious about the path that had led him to such certainty about his place in the world. A distant look crossed his face. "I tried the other life once. After college, I took a job in Houston, energy consulting. Wore suits, attended meetings, climbed the ladder." His mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Was engaged to a woman who loved the city, hated dirt under her fingernails." This revelation surprised Olivia. She'd assumed he'd always been here, always been this grounded rancher, so comfortable in his skin. "What happened?" "My parents' accident." His voice quieted. "I came back to handle arrangements, thinking I'd stay a few weeks. But being here again..." He gestured to the land spread before them. "I realized I'd been sleepwalking through a life that wasn't mine. All the things I thought I wanted, the title, the salary, the downtown condo, they didn't fill the emptiness I felt every morning waking up in that world." The parallels to her own life were too striking to ignore. Your fiancé didn't understand? She tried. Came out here, stayed a month. A sad smile touched his lips. Said she felt like she was suffocating with all this space around her. We parted friends. Olivia absorbed his story, recognizing both the courage it had taken to change his path and the peace he'd found in the decision. Do you ever regret it? The road not taken? Jackson considered the question seriously. I miss certain conveniences, Amazon deliveries that actually arrive on time, coffee shops, Thai food. His eyes found hers, intent and honest. But regret? No. This life, it's hard sometimes, lonely sometimes, but it's mine, authentically mine. As darkness settled fully around them, the stars emerged in breathtaking profusion. Countless pinpoints of light spanning the heavens in patterns Olivia rarely noticed in Chicago's light-polluted skies. Jackson moved his chair closer to hers, their shoulders touching as they gazed upward. It's beautiful, she whispered, afraid speaking too loudly might somehow shatter the perfect moment. Worth staying for? His question carried layers of meaning. Instead of answering with words, Olivia turned to him. In the starlight, his features were cast in silver and shadow, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the depth in his eyes. Following an impulse that bypassed all her careful professional boundaries, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss began gently, a tentative exploration, but quickly deepened as Jackson responded, one hand coming up to cradle her face, while the other slid around her waist, drawing her closer. Unlike the calculated, restrained kisses she'd shared with men in her Chicago life, this was raw, honest, electric, a communication more profound than words could achieve. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Olivia felt as though something fundamental had shifted inside her. The careful walls she'd built between her professional and personal selves had begun to crumble, allowing parts of her long suppressed to emerge into the starlight. I should warn you, Jackson said softly, his forehead resting against hers. I'm not good at temporary. If this is just a ranch vacation fling for you— It's not, she interrupted, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's not that. His hand traced the line of her jaw, thumb brushing across her lower lip in a touch so tender it made her heart ache. Then we take it one step at a time. No rushing, no promises we can't keep. As they sat together beneath the star-scattered sky, Olivia felt a strange peace settle over her. Tomorrow would bring complications: the meeting with Ethan, David's disapproval, the expectations of her firm. But tonight, she had chosen herself, chosen this connection that felt more genuine than anything she'd experienced in years of climbing the corporate ladder. Show me more of your world, she said, taking his hand and lacing their fingers together. I want to understand what made you choose this life. Jackson's smile in the darkness was a promise of discoveries yet to come. It would be my pleasure. The rest of the evening unfolded like a dream, Jackson showing Olivia the night sky through an old telescope that had belonged to his grandfather, identifying constellations and sharing the ranch's history through stories that spanned generations. They talked late into the night, the conversation flowing effortlessly between them, punctuated by increasingly passionate kisses that left them both breathless. When exhaustion finally claimed them, Jackson walked her to the guest room door, pressing his lips to her forehead in a gesture so tender it made her heart ache. Tomorrow comes soon enough, he murmured. Sleep well, Olivia. She wanted to invite him in, to explore the powerful attraction between them fully, but something in his restraint touched her. This wasn't a casual fling for either of them. Whatever was growing between them deserved time and care, not a rushed passion born of temporary circumstances. Morning arrived with golden light streaming through the windows and the scent of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Olivia found Jackson already dressed for the day in crisp jeans and a blue button-down that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the tan of his skin. "Roads are clear," he announced, sliding a mug of coffee across the counter to her. "I checked your car. It'll need a tow, but I can drive you to your meeting with Ethan." The reminder of her professional obligations sent a jolt of reality through Olivia's contentment. Today she would step back into her corporate role, faced with decisions that suddenly seemed far more complicated than when she'd arrived in Texas. "Thank you," she said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "I should probably wear my own clothes, wrinkled as they are. Can't show up to a business meeting in borrowed flannel." Jackson's eyes traveled over her, appreciation evident in his gaze. "I don't know. You make flannel look pretty damn good." The compliment warmed her, but it couldn't dispel the growing anxiety about the meeting ahead. As she dressed in her rumpled business attire, Olivia tried to organize her thoughts, to find a path through the conflicting priorities battling within her. During the drive to Ethan's property, Jackson was quiet, sensing her need to mentally prepare. The landscape rolling past the truck windows was a tapestry of Texas hill country, rugged, beautiful, and defiantly untamed by corporate interests or urban expansion. "Whatever happens today," Jackson finally said as they approached their destination, "just be honest with yourself. The rest sorts itself out." His simple advice cut through the tangle of her thoughts. Honesty. When had she last been truly honest about what she wanted versus what she thought she should want? Ethan Michael's property came into view, a modest but beautiful ranch house surrounded by carefully tended gardens and small outbuildings that presumably housed his artisanal food production. David's SUV was already parked in the gravel drive, along with several other vehicles. "Looks like you've got an audience," Jackson observed, nodding toward the additional cars. "David probably brought the regional legal team," Olivia sighed. "Standard procedure for closing deals." Jackson pulled up beside the SUV but made no move to turn off the engine. "I'll pick you up when you're done. Just call the house phone." The boundaries were clear. This was her meeting, her professional world, and he was respectfully keeping his distance. Yet something in Olivia rebelled against the separation. "Would you come in with me?" The request surprised them both. "Not for the business discussion, but I'd like Ethan to meet you, to know that you've been part of my time here." A slow smile spread across Jackson's face, reaching his eyes. "You sure about that? Your colleague didn't seem too happy about my involvement yesterday." "I'm sure." And she was, with a certainty that felt like solid ground beneath her feet. They found Ethan waiting on the wide front porch, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and work-roughened hands that spoke of a life balanced between business and hands-on production. David stood beside him, his corporate smile faltering when he spotted Jackson accompanying Olivia. "Ms. Reeves," Ethan greeted her warmly, "glad you made it through the storm, safe and sound." His gaze shifted to Jackson. "Thanks to good neighbors, I hear." The men exchanged a handshake that spoke of mutual respect and long acquaintance. Olivia could practically feel David's disapproval radiating beside her. "I didn't realize Mr. Blackwater would be joining our discussion," David said, his professional veneer barely masking his displeasure. "He's not," Olivia replied smoothly. "Jackson was kind enough to drive me here since my rental is still stuck. He'll be leaving once we begin." Ethan waved them all into the house, where a large wooden table had been set for the meeting with pitchers of iced tea and plates of what appeared to be freshly baked cookies. 3 other people were already seated, a young woman Ethan introduced as his daughter and business partner, and 2 men who turned out to be local farmers who supplied hill country provisions with raw ingredients. This wasn't the standard acquisition meeting Olivia had prepared for. In Chicago, such discussions happened in sterile conference rooms with lawyers and executives, not around kitchen tables with family members and suppliers. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. "Before you go, Jackson," Ethan said, "try some of our new jalapeno honey cookies. Just won a regional award." Jackson accepted the offered treat with a grin. "Wouldn't miss it. Your jalapeno honey was what convinced me to start keeping bees on Blackwater." This casual exchange revealed another layer of connection, the local businesses supporting and inspiring each other in ways that went beyond mere transactions. Olivia watched Jackson bite into the cookie, his expression of appreciation genuine and unrestrained. "Damn good, Ethan. You've outdone yourself." The warmth and authenticity of the interaction stood in sharp contrast to David's stiff professionalism as he arranged documents on the table with precise movements. When Jackson finally excused himself with a parting glance at Olivia that conveyed both support and something more intimate, she felt his absence like a physical loss. "Now then," Ethan said once they were settled, "let's talk about why North Star is so interested in my little operation." What followed was ostensibly a standard acquisition discussion: market potential, distribution channels, integration plans, but Olivia found herself increasingly distracted by the human elements that would never appear on a balance sheet. The pride in Ethan's daughter's eyes when she described the company's commitment to hiring local residents in recovery. The quiet dignity of the farmers as they explained sustainable growing practices that yielded exceptional products but limited quantities. "Our proposed efficiency improvements would require consolidating suppliers," David was saying, following the standard playbook. "We've identified several large-scale producers who could meet volume requirements at significantly lower costs." One of the farmers, an older man with sun-weathered skin and clear eyes, spoke up. "And what happens to the 20-some families who've been growing for hill country for generations?" David's corporate smile didn't waver. "Market evolution is inevitable. The most adaptable producers will find new opportunities." The callousness of the response, though couched in acceptable business jargon, struck Olivia with unexpected force. 2 days ago, she might have nodded along, seeing only the logical efficiency of scale rather than the human cost. "Actually," she heard herself saying, "I believe any acquisition agreement should include provisions for maintaining existing supplier relationships." David's head snapped toward her, shock evident in his expression. This was a significant deviation from their prepared strategy, which prioritized cost-cutting and standardization. "That would substantially impact our projected margins," he said, his tone a warning. "Perhaps," Olivia acknowledged, "but it would preserve the quality and community connections that make hill country provisions valuable in the first place." Ethan studied her with new interest. "Sounds like you understand what we're building here better than I expected, Ms. Reeves." "Call me Olivia," she replied, meeting his gaze directly. "And I'm still learning. But I recognize that your company's success is inseparable from your values." The meeting continued for another hour, with Olivia increasingly advocating for a more preservationist approach to the acquisition, one that would maintain the company's local character while providing resources for controlled growth. David's frustration grew visibly with each of her departures from the corporate script, culminating in a tense request for a brief colleague consultation on the porch. Once outside, his professional facade crumbled. "What the hell are you doing? This isn't the deal we came to make." "It's a better deal," Olivia argued, "one that preserves what makes the company valuable instead of gutting it for short-term gains." David stared at her incredulously. "Is this because of him? That rancher? Has one night in cowboy country completely erased your business sense?" The dismissive comment sparked anger deep within her. This has nothing to do with Jackson and everything to do with finally seeing the whole picture instead of just the bottom line. "The bottom line is what we do, Olivia. It's who we are." David's voice rose before he caught himself, glancing toward the house. "The partners sent you because you've never let sentimentality interfere with closing a deal." Now suddenly you're worried about local farmers and community values." Olivia took a deep breath, centering herself. "I'm proposing a more sustainable acquisition strategy, one that builds value over time rather than extracting it all at once." "That's not what the board wants." "Maybe it should be." The certainty in her voice surprised even her. "Maybe we've been doing this wrong all along." David studied her with narrowed eyes. "You're making a career decision right now. You realize that? This deal is your path to partner. Deviate from the plan, and that path disappears." The threat should have terrified her. The partnership she'd worked toward for years hanging in the balance. Instead, she felt an unexpected sense of clarity. "Then I'll forge a different path." When Olivia returned to the meeting, something had changed in her demeanor. The others sensed it immediately, a new certainty in her posture, a clarity in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She was no longer a corporate representative playing a role, but a woman who had found her authentic voice. "Mr. Michaels," she began, retaking her seat at the table, "I'd like to propose a different approach to this acquisition." For the next half hour, Olivia outlined a vision that differed dramatically from North Star's standard playbook. She suggested a partnership structure that would preserve Ethan's leadership and decision-making authority while providing capital for thoughtful expansion. Local supplier relationships would be maintained and strengthened rather than replaced. The company's community initiatives would be enhanced rather than streamlined. David sat in stunned silence as she dismantled the very strategy she had been sent to implement. The farmers and Ethan's daughter exchanged cautiously hopeful glances as they recognized the respect for their work embedded in her proposal. When she finished, Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her with new appreciation. "That's a mighty different picture than what your company pitched in their initial outreach." "It is," Olivia acknowledged, "and I can't guarantee my firm will accept these terms. But this is the only acquisition structure I'm willing to recommend." David's pen clattered onto the table. "We need to discuss this privately, Olivia. The board sent me to evaluate this opportunity and make a recommendation," she interrupted, her voice firm. "This is my professional assessment of how to preserve and grow what makes Hill Country Provisions valuable." A slow smile spread across Ethan's weathered face. "Well now, that sounds like someone who understands what we've built here." He glanced at his daughter, who nodded in agreement. "We'd be interested in seeing a formal proposal along these lines." "I'll draft it myself," Olivia promised, ignoring David's increasingly agitated expression. As the meeting concluded, the atmosphere had transformed from the tense negotiation of corporate interests to something more collaborative. A group of people exploring how their different strengths might complement each other rather than compete. Outside, as the others exchanged handshakes and farewells, David cornered Olivia by his SUV. "You've just committed career suicide," he hissed. "The board will never approve this hippie co-op arrangement you've proposed." Olivia felt strangely calm in the face of his anger. "Then they're missing an opportunity to evolve our business model. The world is changing, David. People care about where their food comes from, who makes it, the values behind it. We can either recognize that trend or be left behind." "Save the sustainability speech," he snapped. "This isn't about business trends. This is about you getting involved with some cowboy and losing your objectivity." The accusation might have stung days earlier, but now Olivia merely smiled. "My relationship with Jackson opened my eyes, yes, but my recommendation is based on sound business judgment. Hill Country Provisions is valuable precisely because of its local connections and authentic production methods. Stripping those away would destroy what we're paying for." David shook his head in disgust. "The partners will hear about this." "I expect they will." Olivia squared her shoulders. "And I'll stand by my assessment." As David's SUV peeled out of the driveway, kicking up gravel in its wake, Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Whether or not her career at North Star survived, she had been true to herself, perhaps for the first time in years. Ethan approached, watching the departing vehicle with amusement. "Your colleague doesn't seem pleased." "He's not," Olivia admitted, "but I think you and I understand each other better." "We do." Ethan nodded toward the road where Jackson's truck was now approaching. "Seems you've come to understand a lot of things better during your time in our part of the world." The knowing look in his eyes brought color to Olivia's cheeks. "It's been an educational visit. Life has a way of putting us where we need to be," Ethan said philosophically. "Even if it takes a storm to get us there." Jackson pulled up beside them, his expression carefully neutral as he assessed the situation. "How'd it go?" Ethan answered before Olivia could. "Your friend here just proposed the first acquisition deal I've heard that doesn't make my stomach turn." He extended his hand to Olivia. "Looking forward to seeing that formal proposal, regardless of what your firm decides." As they drove away from Ethan's property, Olivia felt suspended between worlds, the corporate path she'd walked for so long now diverging sharply from the new direction opening before her. "Want to talk about it?" Jackson asked, his voice gentle. The whole story spilled out. Her departure from the company strategy, David's threats about her partnership prospects, her uncertain professional future. "Do you regret it?" Jackson asked when she finished. Olivia gazed out at the Texas landscape rolling past the window. "Strangely, no. For the first time in years, I feel like I've made a decision based on what's right, not just what's profitable." "And what happens now?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Best case, the board sees the wisdom in my approach and approves a modified acquisition. Worst case, I'm fired for insubordination." Jackson was quiet for a moment, his hands steady on the wheel. Would that be so terrible? Being fired? The question should have horrified her. Her entire identity had been wrapped up in her corporate success for so long. Yet somehow the prospect of losing that role didn't trigger the panic she would have expected. "I think I'd survive," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. They pulled up to Blackwater Ranch as the afternoon sun bathed the landscape in golden light. Her rental car had been towed while they were gone, the muddy driveway the only evidence of the storm that had brought her to this place. On the porch, Jackson turned to face her. "I have something to say, and I need you to just listen before you respond." Olivia nodded, her heart suddenly racing. "When you showed up on my doorstep 2 nights ago, I thought you were just another city person who'd taken a wrong turn. Then I saw something in you, a woman who'd buried parts of herself to succeed in a world that demanded it." His eyes held hers, intense and honest. "Watching you these past days, helping with that calf, standing up for what you believe is right, I've seen the real Olivia emerge, and I'm falling in love with her." The declaration hung in the air between them, profound in its simplicity. "I'm not asking you to give up your life or your career," he continued. "That's not who I am, but I am asking for a chance to see if what's growing between us is as real and important as I think it is." Olivia stepped closer to him, her hand reaching up to touch his face. "And how would that work exactly? My life is in Chicago. Yours is here. Life changes, paths adjust." His hand covered hers against his cheek. "There are regional offices for firms like yours in Austin, in San Antonio, or maybe something entirely different. The question isn't about logistics, it's about whether what we've found is worth exploring, worth fighting for." In that moment, standing on the porch of Blackwater Ranch with this man who had seen through her corporate armor to the woman beneath, Olivia finally understood what Jackson had meant when he said his ranch needed a woman's touch. It wasn't about decorating or domesticity, it was about balance, about bringing complementary strengths together, about creating a whole greater than its parts. "Yes," she said simply, "it's worth fighting for." His smile transformed his face, the intensity in his eyes shifting to something warmer, deeper. As he pulled her into his arms, Olivia felt the last of her carefully constructed walls crumble away. 3 months later, Olivia stood on that same porch, watching the sunset paint the Texas sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Behind her, the screen door opened and Jackson emerged with 2 glasses of wine. "Any regrets?" he asked, handing her one of the glasses. She thought about the changes these months had brought. Her resignation from North Star after they rejected her acquisition proposal, her new consulting practice helping small businesses grow while maintaining their values, her gradual integration into the rhythm of life at Blackwater Ranch, splitting her time between the property and a small office in nearby Austin. "Not one," she answered truthfully, leaning into the solid warmth of his body as his arm encircled her waist. In the distance, the new calf they had delivered together, now growing strong and healthy, frolicked alongside its mother in the pasture. Like that calf, Olivia had found her footing in this new life, discovering strength she hadn't known she possessed and a capacity for joy she'd forgotten existed. The storm that had stranded her at Blackwater Ranch had washed away more than just the road. It had cleared a path to a future she would never have imagined for herself. One where success was measured not in corporate titles or profit margins, but in authenticity, purpose, and love. As Jackson's lips found hers in the fading light, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she had finally found her way home.